We've met before, I'm Holly.
Is he wants to help make your argument for you.
Fancy.
We have a few lines here.
This is probably just it.
Well, thank you all for being here today at our last stakeout before the August district work period. I want to take a step back from where we started this year. Day after day, week after week, despite being underestimated by the mainstream media, House Republicans have consistently delivered results for the American people. And we are continuing to do that this week, whether it's our rigorous oversight efforts and also continuing to advance our legislative agenda, the commitment to America, as we head full force into the August district work period. Just an update on oversight. With each passing day, House Republicans' investigations uncover more and more evidence showing that Joe Biden not only knew about, but was involved in his family's illegal influence peddling scheme and the cover-up from the weaponized Department of Justice. Just last week, we learned from 2 IRS whistleblowers that the DOJ cited optics to prevent them from executing a search on President Biden's home in relation to the investigation of Hunter Biden. We also learned of allegations from a highly credible FBI source who said that Joe Biden was paid $5 million by a Ukrainian natural gas firm his son Hunter was on the board of while he was vice president in exchange for getting a Ukrainian prosecutor investigating the company fired. These are very serious allegations, and our Oversight Committee and the committees of jurisdiction will continue our constitutional responsibility to bring transparency to the American people. This rigorous oversight has certainly rattled the White House, who suddenly has shifted its public position surrounding Joe Biden's knowledge and involvement in Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings. Accountability is here, and House Republicans will leave no stone unturned in our investigations of potential corruption at the highest levels. This week, legislatively, we will continue to work to move forward in the appropriations process. All 12 appropriations bills are public, have been introduced, members are going through them, and 10 of the 12 have already passed out of the full committee. As we speak, also important work that's happening right now, House Judiciary Committee is conducting an oversight hearing with Secretary Mayorkas about his dereliction of duty as our nation faces a surging border crisis. And I just want to note, I applaud Speaker Kevin McCarthy for hosting a viewing of The Sound of Freedom last night. The scourge of child human trafficking, child sex trafficking is real. It's happening in communities across this country, and it's House Republicans that will continue to work to secure the border. And we have many leaders on this issue, ranging from Chris Smith to Barry Loudermilk, who have large and significant legislative portfolios to combat child sex trafficking. As we do every week, I want to highlight one of our rising star freshmen, starting with Kevin Kiley from California's 3rd District, who will be discussing House Judiciary Committee's hearing today with Secretary Mayorkas. Kevin.
Thank you, Chair Stefanik. You know, we have come not to expect much from this administration when it comes to border security, but at the very least, we should be able to expect they will acknowledge reality. The last time Secretary Mayorkas was before our committee, he claimed that this administration's change in border policies has nothing to do with the surge that we have seen at the border. But the dots could not be easier to connect. Immediately upon taking office, this president stopped the common sense border policies that were working. He stopped building physical barriers. He reversed Remain in Mexico. He created whole new categories of de facto amnesty, and the results were immediate and overwhelming. 2021 set a record for illegal border crossings. 2022 broke that record. 2023 is on track to break that record. We have had 5.6 million encounters at the border. We've had 1.5 million gotaways. And what are the consequences of this? The consequences are staggering amounts of fentanyl coming across the border, more and more people being victimized by the horror of human trafficking, more and more migrants dying, making the dangerous journey across the border, and a growing risk to our national security. We are committed to holding this administration accountable, to reversing this disastrous trajectory, and to giving Americans the border security that they deserve. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand it off to Representative Stephanie Bice from Oklahoma, and I'm actually going to head over to the hearing. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, and thank you all for being here this morning. As a new member of the Appropriations Committee, I am very happy with the work that's been done over these last several weeks to get across the finish line 10 of the 12 appropriations bills, and certainly we are looking forward to bringing the Milcon VA appropriations bill to the floor. I want to highlight a few things that the bill does and some things that the bill does not. If you all think back to the beginning of this Congress, when we started drafting the appropriations bill for Milcon VA, you heard the Biden administration, President Biden himself, and his press secretary suggest that Republicans were going to be slashing the benefits of our veterans, and nothing could be further from the truth. We are fully funding veterans' health care programs. We're fully funding benefits in VA programs, including the Electronic Health Record Modernization Initiative. We're supporting a strong national security. This bill that's being put forward on the floor provides nearly $800 million above the president's budget request for military construction, focusing on the Pacific Theater, barracks, and other quality of life projects. A couple of things here. It eliminates funding for the Office of Public Affairs in response to the VA's inaccurate and politically motivated press releases making false claims about our budget cuts, which we wrote a letter asking them to withdraw that information from their website. They refused. A couple of numbers here. There is, this bill will provide $17.4 billion for DoD military construction, family housing. That's almost $800 million, as I mentioned, above the PB request. And I think one of the things that's been talked about in the NDAA as well as in our subcommittee has been child development centers. This bill will provide $293 million for 7 new child development centers, in addition to $75 million for planning and design. I applaud Chairman Carter, who worked tirelessly over these last several months to get this across the finish line, and I look forward to supporting it on the House floor. Thank you, and at this time, I turn it over to Tom Emmer.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hopping off of our hockey soapbox this week, I wanted to talk about something that may be flying under everybody's radar. Today, our nonpartisan legislation, the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act, is going to be marked up in the Financial Services Committee. Crypto and blockchain technology provide an important opportunity for our country to lead in the digital asset space. I commend Chair McHenry for moving forward with this. Today we've got an important opportunity to make progress towards providing regulatory certainty that benefits consumers and fosters innovation right here at home. This bill specifically deals with what blockchain-related entities qualify as money transmitters across the country. Major discrepancies in the state-by-state framework on this issue have stifled innovation and confused the marketplace on how to comply with money transmission requirements. The Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act will clear things up by affirming for the blockchain community that if you don't custody consumer funds, you aren't a money transmitter. It's simple, but very important. A clear and consistent regulatory landscape will ensure we do not drive this transformative technology overseas or drive American consumers to bad actors. This bill will allow blockchain innovation to flourish right here in the U.S., and I look forward to continuing to work with my colleagues on the committee to get it over the finish line. And with that, I turn it over to our leader, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Whip. This week's another busy legislative week on the floor. We are bringing 2 appropriations bills. We will start off today with the Milcon VA bill, and as my colleagues talked about, a really important bill to make sure that we're fulfilling our commitments to our men and women in uniform who make sacrifices, who deserve to be taken care of, and we're going to be following through on that. While we also push back on some of this woke agenda that the Biden administration continues to try to interject into our nation's military, trying to push CRT, other items, instead of taking care of our men and women in uniform, making sure that our military is up to the threat that countries like China pose. You look at the agriculture bill as well, addresses the threat of China buying up farmland. In fact, China is buying up farmland and other land near some of our most sensitive military bases, and it's gone unchecked. By this administration, we start to address those concerns in these legislative instruments that are coming to the floor. So we're going to continue to do our job to move our agenda. And if you look at just the first 7 months that we've been in the majority, and Chair Stefanik talked about this, we ran on a very specific agenda last year when we asked the American people to give us the opportunity to lead, to fire Nancy Pelosi as Speaker, and actually put House Republicans in charge. We said we would go and tackle some of the toughest challenges facing our country. We would go to bat fighting for those families who have been struggling, who have been pummeled by the rules, the regulations, the radical policies of the Biden administration, and we've been fulfilling those commitments. In fact, if you look at all of the agenda items that we moved, they all fit with the things we said we would do. H.R. 1, the Lower Energy Costs Act, actually passing good energy policy so that families who are sick and tired of paying 50% more at the pump or 30% more in their household electricity bills, or when they go to the grocery store to buy food that's more expensive. Because of President Biden's attack on American energy, we pushed back on that, and that is over in the Senate. We passed a strong border security bill, H.R. 2. We passed a Parents' Bill of Rights to say that parents ought to be able to have more say in their kids' education without union bosses colluding with the White House, which we exposed, by the way, happened under the Biden administration's first 2 years to try to shut schools down and keep kids out of schools. We've now seen the devastation that did to millions of our young people who will never make up the lost ground that they lost when President Biden shut down schools working with unions to go against the science. Remember when President Biden ran, he said he would let this all be driven by the science except when the science conflicts with the union bosses. And there were emails we uncovered that showed when CDC was getting ready to come out with guidance for opening up schools, President Biden worked with the union bosses who gave very specific suggestions how to make changes to the scientific guidance to instead have politics involved to keep schools shut down longer, and President Biden sided with the union bosses and political science against medical science, and to the detriment of our kids, millions of kids who will never make that up. We've continued to push back on so many of these radical policies that we've seen under President Biden by passing bills to fight for those families who are struggling. And it's an agenda that we're going to be talking about all around the country during these next few weeks as Congress finishes our work up here and goes back out into the real world where people actually have to live by the rules and regulations that President Biden's unelected bureaucrats are imposing upon them. And we're also going to continue a very robust oversight of this administration, something that's been a long time coming, something that's exposed many alarming things. And you saw our freshman of the week, Kevin Kiley, talk about what's happening at the border as he goes to that hearing with Mayorkas. Last week, we had a number of hearings that exposed more things. You just saw more attempts by the team. Look at what happened. Just yesterday, you had one of the Biden team lawyers try to represent themselves as somebody else in court to get documents changed, and the judge is dealing with that right now. This is something that continues to go on. Republicans are going to continue to fight to get the facts out. That's our role. We're going to fight for families. We're going to fight to get the facts out. With that, we'll be happy to take some questions.
A question on appropriations. Are you in talks to make any changes to those two bills? We talked to some Freedom Caucus members who want deeper cuts. What's your message to them, the ones who are receiving even deeper cuts?
Right, and you see deeper cuts in a lot of these bills, just trying to realign with the pre-COVID spending levels to get government spending under control. I think everybody recognizes that spending in Washington is what is driving inflation, and so we started to address that in the debt ceiling. In these appropriations bills, there are additional amendments to cut further. So, you're going to see, like in any appropriations bill, a robust amendment process. That will be no different with Milcon VA. We haven't finalized the rule on ag, and that's something we're meeting with them on throughout the day.
Thanks, Leader Scalise. What do you make of the Speaker's threat to launch an impeachment inquiry? President Biden, why the threat to launch an impeachment inquiry over the taxes issue as opposed to also the other issues that Republicans have been blasting by administration over, such as the border?
You know, it's not in lieu of anything. It's one, we believe we can do many things at the same time, and we've proven that we have been able to expose a lot of things going on in the Biden administration from multiple agencies. And so an impeachment inquiry is just one more example where we've been trying to get information from the Biden administration. They've been trying to block us on many fronts. And you've seen the committees of jurisdiction, of course. You know, anything dealing with impeachment would go through judiciary, but you've seen Jamie Comer's committee, you saw Jason Smith's committee, all working to get bank records, to expose these shell corporations. The Biden administration didn't want to comply with any of this. And in fact, we weren't able to get access to any of this information to show the public what was going on prior to our time in the majority, because we didn't have subpoena power. You know, it was just exposed that one of the people who bought one of Hunter Biden's pieces of art for hundreds of thousands of dollars just got a plum appointment by the Biden administration. You know, you look at the shell corporations. President Biden is on record, on video, from when he was a candidate for president through his presidency, saying he never knew about any of his family's business dealings, and yet now there is information that's come forward that shows he in fact did know about those business dealings. And it wasn't just Hunter, it was multiple Biden family members who were getting money from foreign countries, in fact. We exposed all of this by doing our investigations. There are still some things we need to get information on that this administration's been stonewalling on. An inquiry gives us more ability to find out the facts, to get those facts out to the American people, and we're going to pursue to continue to show what's been going on and to hold this administration accountable.
If you move forward with the Biden impeachment inquiry, what does that mean for efforts to impeach other Biden cabinet officials, Secretary Mayorkas or Attorney General Garland? Do they sort of fade away, or can you do all three at one time?
Yeah, in fact, multiple committees are dealing with multiple inquiries, and an inquiry is not in and of itself an impeachment, but it's just an ability to get more information that the Biden administration is trying to block the American people from seeing. You know, why doesn't the Biden administration, who ran on transparency, want to actually be transparent when it comes time? And so one of our responsibilities as a majority is to hold the administration accountable even when they're trying to cover things up. And so we're going to continue to dig into this. You saw Chairman Green laying out through the Homeland Security Committee a set of criteria for Mayorkas, and there's been moves to impeach there. You look at our border's not secure. He testifies in committee saying it's secure. The movie that Elise talked about lays out so many disturbing elements, and we've seen it ourselves. So many of us have gone down to the border. I embedded with the Border Patrol agents. And they, by the way, you're not just watching what's going on at the border with floods of people coming over illegally, because President Biden, in essence, has said you can come into America and the laws don't matter anymore. But the Border Patrol agents are telling you what needs to be fixed. And every time we try to press the administration to do those things, they refuse. So Secretary Mayorkas doesn't want to secure the border. He knows what the problems are. In fact, most of the things that need to be done to secure the border are things he could do himself today. President Biden could sign a piece of paper today. These aren't laws that would need to change. Now, we passed H.R. 2, the Securing the Border Act, that would require that the president secure the border, but does it really take an act of Congress to make President Biden actually do the job he was elected to do, and that's to keep this country safe and to secure America's border and get back to the rule of law? We are the most generous nation in the world on immigration. No country in the world lets more people come to our country legally. Over 1 million people a year legally. The number 2 country is not even close, and yet President Biden has thrown that in the trash can, and now we're well over 5 million people in the last 2 years that have come here illegally, and nobody can tell you where they are. Nobody can tell you what states they've been sent to, which school systems they're clogging, which we hear nightmare stories about hospitals that are being overrun, shut down. There are deep, deep consequences. We know the drug overdoses from drugs like fentanyl. We're losing 150 young people a day because Joe Biden opened the southern border, and now the cartels are bringing in drugs by the truckload, by the boatload, and President Biden won't stop it. Secretary Mayorkas won't stop it. We're going to continue to get the facts out, and we can do all of these things at the same time while we're moving a legislative agenda, including appropriations
Last
bills.
question.
Yes, could you, you're already passed, looks like you're already passed one appropriations bill this week, maybe
See that? You heard it right here. This is breaking news. Thank you.
And then going into September, you're gonna have a very short time frame until September 30th. Would you be supportive of a short-term CR to give more time to?
Well, what I'd like to see us do is, number one, start, as you say, start the appropriations process on the House floor. The committees have done a phenomenal job. Stephanie, Vice, Kate Granger, all of the members of the House Appropriations Committee have done their job. They moved almost every single bill out of the Appropriations Committee at the target levels they were given. There are additional amendments, of course, on bills, and that's what the legislative process is all about. But if you look, the Senate's starting to move bills too, finally, because we made it clear from Speaker McCarthy on down, we said we are not going to bring an omnibus appropriations bill to the floor, like in years past, where the Senate just wouldn't do their job. Whether we passed one bill, all 12 bills, the Senate wouldn't move any bills, knowing that there would be some Christmas tree at the end of the year. That's not going to happen. And so why don't we, during the August recess, start negotiations on the bills that have come out of committee? However many bills can come out of the House, if any can come out of the Senate, we at least have gotten bills out of committee. You can start having negotiations between the two bodies. Then we'll come back in September, and let's not sell ourselves short. Let's put the pressure that needs to be there on the Congress, the House and the Senate, to move as many bills through the process as possible, but ultimately to actually get to conference committees again. The American people learn in civics course, if they still teach this in civics courses, hopefully, about the legislative process. A bill passes the House, a bill passes the Senate. If they're not identical, then you go to a conference committee and you work out the differences. That hasn't happened with the appropriations process in a long, long time, and it's about time that changes. We're starting that change now. We can be starting those negotiations over the August work period and then come back in September and finish what's left. Well, thank you all. We'll see you all on the floor.
Thank you.